Power tools use many ball bearings to allow various components to rotate. Over time, a ball bearing will wear and begin to fail. A bearing that is failing will usually give warning, often with a squeaking or squealing sound. Replacing a ball bearing is a repair that you can do yourself, and I'm going to show you how.
Hi, I'm Mark Socha.
Do-it-yourself repairs like these are easier than you might think. From lawn machines to cordless drills, kitchen mixers,
Outdoor grills.
our how-to videos walk you through each repair from start to finish. So doing it yourself means never having to do it alone.
Let's get started.
I'll begin by removing the lower guard from the saw. There's a spacer on the linkage. I want to be careful not to lose it. As I remove the guard, I want to be careful to not lose the spring. Now remove the blade. And I'll remove the inner flange. Now I'll remove the upper guard. And I'll remove the blade lock and spring. Now I'll remove the screw that secures the gearbox. With the screw removed, I can go ahead and remove the gearbox. I'll place the gear case over my vise jaws. Then I'll use a rubber mallet to remove the arbor from the housing. Now I'll use a bearing puller to remove the small bearing on the end of the arbor. Now I need to remove the gear from the arbor shaft. Again, I'll place the gear over my vise jaws, and I'll use a socket that'll fit over the smaller portion of the shaft and onto the shoulder. It's a good idea to use an older socket to do this because I will be hitting it with a hammer to remove the arbor shaft. I'll remove the key from the shaft. And again, I'll place the shaft and bearing back into the vise. This time I have the outer race of the bearing sitting on the vise jaws. I'll again use my socket, and now I'll tap the shaft out of the bearing. Now I can install the new bearing. I'll place the shaft into the bearing, and now I've adjusted my vise jaws so that the inner race is resting on the jaw. And I'll place the socket on the flange on the arbor shaft, And now I'll install the shaft into the bearing. Now I'll reinstall the key and the gear. Now I'll reinstall the second bearing. And now this assembly can go back into the gearbox. I'll line the large bearing with the opening in the gearbox. And once again, I'll use a socket to tap it into place. Now I'll reinstall the gearbox and secure it with the screw. Now I'll reinstall the blade lock. First the spring, and then the blade lock lever. At this point, I just rest it in the housing. And now I'll reinstall the upper guard. First, I'll place the spacer onto the housing. Now I'll line up the screws on the upper guard and install it to the saw. As I do this, I need to make sure that I insert the pin for the blade lock through the hole in the housing. Now reinstall the blade. First, the inner flange. Then the blade. The outer flange. And the washer and bolt. Now I can reinstall the guard. I'll place the spring over the hook on the guard. I'll place the guard around the blade, and as I bring it up, I'll hook the spring to the tab on the housing. With the guard in place on the saw, I'll secure it with the hub and the screw. I want to make sure that the bearing that's attached to the linkage sits on top of the block on the upper guard. I'll place the spacer against the saw housing, place the link over the spacer, and then secure it with the washer and screw. And now you know how to install a new ball bearing in your power tool. Be sure to check back often for new videos and expert advice. If you found this video helpful, give us a thumbs up.